The Robert Salah era is over and the Jeff Ulbrich era begins. What's going on here at Jeff Fans? Second show. I think this is actually our fault, Matt. You know, we tried to start up a little collaboration and then the Jets just go ahead and fire their head coach.
Yeah, look at this. 1 week in, really. Well, this is episode number 2 of this little collab here. But yeah, we're going to get into the start of the Jeff Ulbrich era. And of course, naturally, the fallout from everything Robert Salah related, because it's never easy with this team. It's never smooth sailing. There's always got to be something going on.
Yeah, I figured I was like making I just try to like make my notes for each like day of what I'm doing for content, and I'm like I kind of put in pencil like Devante Adams reaction for this week, and the football gods were like, no, you can fire your head coach and fight about that. You will not get an all-pro wide receiver just yet. So I actually haven't. I tuned into your Talking Jets a little bit the other night. The green bean was heavy on the mic, that one, so I didn't get to hear what your initial takeaway was from the firing. Were you on board with Salah? I'm assuming you were surprised like everyone else.
Yeah, I was surprised like everyone else. I was mere seconds away from posting a video about Devante Adams and yelling. It was a rant video, and I was like, look, I know everyone's complaining like the offensive coordinator is the problem or they won't do anything with this coach, but like, I don't know. I don't think they're going to fire anyone in season. And mere seconds before that was posted, the Adam Schefter noti came through, and I had to look like 3 times to make sure that it was real. I don't want to get duped. You know, you have to double check nowadays. But it was very real. And look, like, does this fix everything? No. Nathaniel Hackett's still a really bad play caller. If they make the switch to Todd Downing, which I'm sure we'll get into at some point in this show, I'm not sure like he's this great savior, but it's someone different. But at the end of the day, it didn't look good for Salah. The last few weeks in particular, he just looked like a dead man walking on the sideline. Just looked like he didn't want to be here anymore. And the interesting quotes to me were Rodgers 2 weeks ago and last week Quincy Williams, and the word accountability kept coming up. And the last 2 days, I think the Jets, between Woody Johnson, Ulbrich, and all the players, they might have said that about 57 times in the interviews the last 2 days, that word. So I think it was a necessary change at this point.
Yeah, and I agree with you as well. I think that with any change they make, and even look, let's be honest, if they kept Salah, fired Hackett, and went to Downing, you could say the same thing. What does this fix? You look up Downing's resume, and you all of a sudden it looks eerily similar to Nate Hackett. Tennessee Titans fans tell you he's the worst play caller ever. You say you still have Keith Carter, you have Robert Salah, and it's like, man, and no Jet fan is arguing that all of our problems are fixed. Like, nobody is saying that this is a panacea for the Jets' problems. But I mean, Robert Salah was hired in 2021, and there were 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 coaches hired in that cycle. Urban Meyer fired in 6 games. David Culley fired in 1 year. Arthur Smith fired in 3 years. Brandon Staley fired in 3 years. Robert Salah fired in 3.5 years. So he got a longer leash than all those guys. Like, Urban Meyer was kind of an outlier, was crazy, but the other guys all had a higher winning percentage than him. Brandon Staley made a playoff game. Nick Sirianni's on the hot seat. He was in the Super Bowl a couple of years ago. So I think, you know, we've seen things from, you know, credible reports to logical speculation to downright conspiracy theories on this fire. But I like to, on this show, when I don't know, because I don't have any sources, I try to go with Occam's razor, which is the simplest solution, is probably the most correct one. And I'm going to wager that Robert Salah was fired for the same reason that every NFL head coach gets fired, and that's if you're around 3 years into the job and you're not winning, you go. That's what, and the Jets historically give long leashes. You know, people say, oh, it's the Jets, they give up on everybody, all this stuff. And it's like, dude, I don't know, man. We got a GM in year 6 who is beloved, who has a historically bad win-loss record. And like 2/3 of the fan base think he's a god. You have Robert Salah, 3 years with no playoffs. Usually you're done. You're toast. Robert Salah has still never had a season where his winning percentage was higher than Adam Gase's best season as a Jet. And then you had like Zach Wilson, who was like 3 years of like Jimmy Clausen, Josh Rosen level experimenting that most teams bury and beg the football gods for forgiveness for revealing it to the universe for 1 year. They just do away with it. Oh my God, I'm so sorry. And it's gone. With 3 years, we were arguing about it. So I don't know, man. It just seems like you don't have to be in lockstep with everything this organization does as a fan. Maybe this is one of the many mistakes they've made, but it's like, oh, it's not Zach Wilson's fault. It's the coaching, or no, the coach just didn't have a good quarterback. It's like, okay, well, they're both gone. Well, what about the GM who picked them both? No, he's the best ever in franchise history. What do you? So it's like, okay, we had a great GM, a really good quarterback, and like a good coach for the last 3-4 years, and we haven't won games. Like, that's not mathematically possible. So it is what it is, man. Salah goes. It's just, you don't win enough games. It's 19-36, and you got to go. It is what it is.
Yeah, I'm with you right there. I'm sorry. I tried not to derail the stream. Francisco Lindor just hit a grand slam to give the Mets a 4-1 lead. So if you see me looking up or like celebrating, I apologize. Buffalo.
I thought I was just having a really good take.
No, well, that I am a huge Buffalo Jet fan, and we did have a really good take, and it's something that I agree with. But yes, I got one eye on you and one eye up. No disrespect here. We're fighting in the play. That's all. But anyway, back on topic here. I love the point that you just brought up about Joe Douglas, because I think like it's such a conversation that nobody seems to want to have. It's like they want to blame everyone else but the GM. And look, I like a lot of what Joe Douglas has done as general manager of the New York Jets, but how he is like, I call him Teflon Joe sometimes, because it feels like the fan base just refuses to give him, any sort of blame here. And like, you're right. He was the one who drafted Zach Wilson. He's the one who hired the head coach. And now, I have heard people discussing like, oh, well, he should be a part of the head coaching search next year. Like, can we let this play out the rest of this year, the final 12 games? Because if they miss the playoffs this year, which I'm not saying is, what I think is going to happen here, I think there's a chance they get this thing back on track. But if this team goes 8-9 and misses the playoffs, is Joe Douglas getting year 7? Like, that just seems absolutely.
It'll be more than that, because it's not going to be a 1-year extension, right? It'd be like a 4-year deal.
Right. So how many opportunities does he get? So I think it's really up to Ulbrich to get this thing on track. And I know this decision probably wasn't Joe Douglas's. It seems like it was really Woody Johnson who wanted to do this, but for Douglas's sake, like this has gotta work.
Yeah, I always make the joke that, or just the point of like with JD, I'm saying obviously not firing him right now, that accomplishes nothing. And I think that he, I picked the Jets to win the division coming into this year, and that's probably the first time I felt like we could like objectively win the division in a lot, like maybe after I was off the high of like the 2015 outlier year, and we thought we could repeat that in 2016. And since then, I haven't really felt like we could win the division. And the biggest reason I thought that was because of the talented players that Joe Douglas has acquired. So for sure, he deserves a lot of credit for that. But it seems like whenever anything good happens to the franchise, like Joe Douglas gets credit. And whenever anything negative happens, it's like Robert Salah or Woody Johnson or Jake Asman or whoever else. So it's like, Hassan Reddick is like in Japan in like an anime costume, and people are like, damn it, Keith Carter, how could you do this? And it's like, that's on the GM. Like he picks all the coaches and all the players, and like the win-loss record isn't on him, whatever. Conversation for a different, at the end of the year, we can kind of do and see how Joe Douglas performs. But with Salah as well, like, yeah, Hackett, he wanted to keep MLF, and then they forced him to take Zach Wilson, and then they forced him to bring on Hackett and the Rodgers bet he made with it. So I understand that, but I can't really think of any head coaches who are fired without like extenuating circumstances going against them. Usually it's a dumpster fire. It's not like, oh, this quarterback had this coach had a franchise quarterback in his prime the whole time. The roster was chock with talent the whole time. There was great assistant coaches. The media was perfectly friendly to them, and they got fired. It never works that way. It hardly ever works that way. Usually the GM and the coach go together because there's all kinds of problems. So we don't got to pour one out for coach. He's going to get a defensive coordinator job like that. He'll be great at it. He takes good care of himself. He could do it till he's 70. He's going to make a crap ton of money. I think there was just a clear ceiling. Like, did anybody think Salah was going to hoist the Lombardi trophy? I just don't think so. So rip the Band-Aid off now.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Like, you get to a point, and we all have eyes. Like I just, how many times did Robert Salah just get out coached? It was week after week after week, and going into these matchups, even against teams that you maybe feel like against the Vikings, I thought they had a chance where they could, they could win that game, and the defense did their job. But you look at Salah and Hackett, like that duo, the head coach and the offensive coordinator, going up against Kevin O'Connell as a head coach and their defensive coordinator, Brian Flores, like clearly a mismatch. And we have no idea what Ulbrich is going to be at this level, but I just hope at an absolute bare minimum, it's a wake up call to this team, because it looks like they've kind of just been going through the motions. And some of their young guys who we all love and who I think are great players, Sauce Gardner, Garrett Wilson, Breece Hall, you go right down the list. Those guys have kind of underperformed this year, and they need to get back on track. And I hope this is the wake up call to them to, get it in gear.
Yes, I think this team needs it. And there is that, like, typically you see that first game off of an interim coach high, and like, dude, even if it steals us like 2 weeks of momentum and we win 2 games you might not have otherwise, and the rest of the season, like Ulbrich and Salah are a dead heat. Like, hey, we take those 2 wins, man. Like, because you're probably changing coaches at the end of the year anyway, so why not? Now, there were some. I'll stick to the reports because there's all kinds of rumors, speculation, man. Like, I don't want to try to get into too much of the weeds of like who did what and backdoor conversations with Aaron Rodgers and all that. But Connor Hughes did report that an almost insanely unbelievable timeline. Now he's just reporting what he's told. I'm not saying Connor is lying or anything like that. But he said that Salah showed up Tuesday morning ready to plan for the Bills. Then it was decided that he was going to demote Nate Hackett and give Todd Downing the play calling duty. And then 5 minutes after that was called into his office and fired. What do you make of that?
I don't know if I buy it. That seems a while. That I don't know. I think Robert Salah is doing a good job of putting his story out there. I don't know your take on it, but to me, it feels like a lot of, maybe more so the national guys, but it feels like his story is the one that's getting pushed, that he was escorted out, and the phrasing of some of these tweets.
That's Salah's camp. For sure.
Yeah, exactly. That they're getting out there. Right. But I kind of think, am I a sucker for believing that Woody Johnson and Aaron Rodgers didn't actually discuss it on Monday night? I kind of believe the story of like, hey, are you okay? Kind of a thing, the call in after the injury sort of.
When I heard Robert Salah was fired and then Nate Hackett was staying, the first thought that popped into my mind was not like Rodgers storming into Woody Johnson's office and saying you have to fire Robert Salah, to be honest. That now Nate Hackett is here. He was hired because of Aaron Rodgers, and he has unearned job security because of Aaron Rodgers. So whether directly or indirectly, he is protected by Rodgers. I think if the Jets hired Nate Hackett and, signed Derek Carr and we were in the same spot, Nate Hackett would be fired, right? You know what I'm saying? If it wasn't that close relationship with the quarterback. So whether directly or indirectly, Nate Hackett's ass is saved by Aaron Rodgers 100%. But I can't claim without evidence that Aaron Rodgers called for Salah's head. No. It'd be irresponsible to say that without evidence.
No, but and then like I don't get why that would be. Like, what does it change?
What does that solve?
Yeah, what does it change?
He just wants a guy with a beard.
Yeah, you go from Salah defensive coordinator to Salah as the head coach to now the defensive coordinator who Salah hired and runs this essentially the same defensive scheme that Salah did. Like, that's not this grand change. Like, if Rodgers really did have this franchise by the balls as much as the national media puts out there, like, why wasn't Hackett made the interim then? And I know that would have been horrible for optics wise, but right. Like, if Hackett was really Rodgers' guy as much, like I think it was you who had the tweet, like Rodgers cares more about his legacy than he does about Nathaniel Hackett, and like it's so true.
Yeah, and I think that with Rodgers, the thing is right now it's not a good look for him because everyone's saying you got your coach fired. So why would he invite that upon himself? Because right now it's like an admission of failure that Robert Salah is fired. So it doesn't make nobody looks good right now. So it wouldn't really make sense. I don't think that again, if they fired him in the off season and then they hired some head coach that like Rodgers had ties with, that's a different conversation. That maybe that like there was a line you could draw there. But and to be clear, Rodgers has more authority than probably any quarterback in the NFL.
Sure.
But it's just we can't just say every decision that happens with the Jets, Aaron Rodgers was the driving force to it if we don't have evidence. Super chat from Dante. I feel JD is slipping under the radar when it comes to blame. I'm not talking this year. He did all right this year, but cumulatively, I think he deserves just as much blame. Hi, BJF from Chitawaga. First of all, that was like some of the best grammar I've ever seen in a super chat. We love you guys, but sometimes when you give us money, you're drunk and you say incoherent things. So Chitawaga, oh dude, you're like I could throw a stone and hit your house. What do you think of this, Matt?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's something that we discussed, in the early minutes here on this stream, was that I think we both feel that Douglas is a little bit or gets a pass from this fan base. And look, like overall, I think he's done a pretty good job, but pretty good doesn't cut it when you're in a 14-year playoff drought and he's in year 6 right now and in the final year of his deal. So I do put some blame on him. I blame him for a big part of what happened last year. They didn't go out and get another quarterback. Now, I don't know if that was money, like restrictions from ownership. I know that was something that's been, rumored why they didn't go out and add anything else. But at times he's felt a little bit stubborn and it's come back to bite him. So again, I hope that he gets this right and they make the playoffs and they sign him to an extension and he's, the GM that eventually is here for when this team wins the championship. But I'm at the point now where like, I don't want to just hang my hat on, he built this great roster. Like the roster's in such a better spot now than it was when he was here in 2021 or 2020. Like it's time for the results to show up on the field.
Yeah. And I think part of this move is like, now you get to see, and look, Jeff Ulbrich, we're not saying that he's some great head coach, but now at least you get to see the GM's roster coached by a different coach. So you kind of get to evaluate your GM a little bit more, if that makes sense. And with JD again, like I think I agree with the premise of most Jet fans. Like, look, the roster, if you look at the roster from when he took over and you go position by position, like there's really hard to find a spot that was not upgraded. And there's like legitimate star power on this team of guys whose like jerseys are worth buying, of guys who fans of other teams will turn on the TV to watch and all of that. It's more exciting, but we still have yet to eclipse the 7-9 record that, the Gase here was. So I try and also, let's be honest, the two most important parts of a team for a GM to acquire is a long-term solution at head coach and a long-term solution at quarterback. And it's year 6, and we don't have those, and we don't have any evidence that he can acquire those. And part of the reason why he stuck with the coach is because of the quarterback. And I'm not trying to look. I was all on board for Aaron Rodgers. I'm not trying to blame Monday morning quarterback. I'm just evaluating like the results of what's happened. So I think it's totally fair. I guess the sticking point with me is I can't square away that the product on the field and the win-loss record, that the man who makes all the football decisions has no culpability to that. Like that to me does not compute. So I think when I talk about this to other Jet fans, like it's just like it's almost a non-starter because I can't get there. Because if I were to ask you who are the best GMs in the NFL, what you would do in your mind is you would just automatically think to yourself, what teams win a lot of games over and over again, year in and year out. That's what you would do. You wouldn't say, oh, well, the Jacksonville Jaguars are 0-4, but look at the roster, man. Look at you wouldn't do that. So you got to win games, man. And hopefully this turns us around. And what do you think is the criteria for like, does Jeff Ulbrich having a shot to keep this gig? I know we probably want an offensive guy, but I don't know if he makes the playoffs. Does he become the coach long term?
He might. I think it would be really tough for them to make the playoffs and win a game and then be like, all right, thanks, Jeff. We're going to let you go now and go and do this playoff search. It's certainly possible. But I think this is a really cop-out answer. I think we need the eye test of how this plays out.
But it's true, though.
Like if they sneak in as the 7 seed at 9-8 and get bounced by, the Ravens in the wild card game, then yeah, he's probably not coming back. But if they somehow, they go on a little bit of a run, maybe they win the division at 10 wins. Like, I don't know how good this AFC East is. They have a home playoff game and they beat up on a wild card team and then maybe bow out after that. All right, maybe you can convince me that with some coaching shakeup on the offensive side of the ball that, they would have a legitimate shot next year. So, I think there's a world where he can come back, but it's really hard for me to write that in stone without actually seeing it yet.
Yeah, and I think you have to see like the issues that we've had with Salah, are those fixed? Like, is the team more disciplined? Are the penalties decreasing? The first quarter where you kind of come out flat consistently, and just like struggle, like the team can't, like other offense, like can he have an impact on the offense? Because if this team just still wins because of defense and our offense is middling, and even if we win one playoff game that way, like, dude, I don't know if I can commit to living like that. You know what I mean? So for Crossfire says falafel. As a member for 19 months. I think that's on your end, Matt. Is there some meaning to falafel?
Yeah. So last night in one of the epic green bean rants, the Tuesday Talking Jet show is always chaos. That's my favorite piece of content we do every week. But Green Bean in particular was on one last night. He had like 4 clippable rants, so I montaged it. But one of them, he was ranting and raving about the Jets chant at the stadium and how they've like made it so corporate. And then there was this video where they had fans going around whispering like JETS. And he was making jokes like they had someone who's like outside St. Patrick's Cathedral and like this falafel. Yeah, so that's the inside joke there.
Love it, man. Appreciate you, Crossfire. Super chat from Hexen. I feel like our offensive coordinator room is like our QB room in last year. So our like Keith Carter, Nate Hackett, and Todd Downing are Zach Wilson, Trevor Siemian, and Tim Boyle. Okay, so who's who? That's my question for you, man. Hackett's got to be Zach, right?
Yeah, you took the words out of my mouth. I was going to say Hackett's got to be Zach.
Keith Carter is Boyle.
Yeah, and then Trevor Siemian's our guy Todd Downing, I guess.
Oh my
That's
God.
probably how this goes. But what's so funny to me too with this firing of Robert Salah and those who say, "What does it solve? The offense isn't the problem." Like you were saying about Joe Douglas, and he's he runs the football operations. Salah's the head coach. He's the one who's brought in this staff. Like he handpicked the rejects from Tennessee and helped bring them in here too. So does he not get any blame for that? Like if he was the defensive coordinator, yeah, of course, we're not having this conversation. He would have done his job and plenty more, but he's the head football coach of the team. He deserves a little bit of blame for the offense and especially the staff that was put together.
Right. Now, Hackett was forced upon him, but he hired Downing and Carter and his own volition. And yeah, you're right, man. He's the head coach. I think people say, well, his side of the ball is doing fine. And it's like, there is no his side of the ball. His side of that's the definition of a defensive coordinator. Like if that was true, then teams wouldn't have head coaches. They would just have a defensive coordinator and an offensive coordinator. But he is responsible for all that, especially as he was billed as a CEO head coach. He doesn't call defensive plays. It's not like, and people say, oh, well, what about when an offensive head coach's offense is doing well? They don't get as much blame. And I would say, yeah, because it's an offensive league and the extent to which you can leverage offensive coaching is like greater than defensive coaching, at least in my opinion. Like you can move the needle more with an Andy Reid, a Kyle Shanahan than you can like a Robert Salah or I don't know, like D'Amico Ryans or whatever the case may be on defense. And also, I lost my train of thought.
On the defensive coaching?
Yeah. So, but yeah, dude, Mike McDaniel, he's probably going to get fired because the defense fell apart. He's losing games. The quarterback is injured. Zach Taylor, if the Bengals keep winning 20% of their games, even though Joe Burrow and the offense just scored like 35 points and they lost, he's probably going to end up getting fired. And it's Stefanski, right? And if like Sean McVay is in his play set going like Spider Y2 banana X, and the offense is doing well, like, okay, but he's actually calling plays. So your whole shtick is that you're the overseer of the whole team and your team is like not prepared and undisciplined and can't execute situationally. That's on you. I wish we could hire a new coach and keep him as our defensive coordinator. He might be the best defensive coordinator in the NFL, truly, but the evidence is just in that he's not a good coach. And you know what? The league is going to answer this question for us because the NFL and GMs all have all the context we're privy to. Does anyone think Robert Salah is getting a head coaching job next year?
No,
Like,
God, no.
so I don't, it's kind of like Zach Wilson. Like, he's a third stringer. The league told you, as much as the Jets had their faults. Another super chat came in. Oh, Dante, very generous. Call me pro Robert Salah, but I trust him more than the owner and GM. They should have let Wilson go, kept Mike White. Oh my God. Or got a legit backup. I feel JD Woody forced Salah's hand in both decisions, including Mike LaFleur. So we got Mike White re-entering the chat.
Yeah, I don't know if I could do the Mike White Zach Wilson convo again in big 2024 here, but if I will die on the sword for someone, it's Mike LaFleur. I didn't want the Jets to fire him a couple of years ago, and we still have no idea if he's going to actually be a good OC. Like he's paired up with Sean McVay, who we all agree is one of the best play callers and one of the better coaches in the NFL. And he's not calling the plays there, but I don't know. I think LaFleur was doing an okay job, and we saw the offense succeed with pretty much any quarterback not named Zach Wilson. So that one I'll give you on the stick kicking around with Mike White here. Like he couldn't go a game and a half without getting hurt. Like he'd get folded in half or throw 3 picks, and he had a lot of flashy moments, but that's another guy. Is he on a roster right now? Even I know
he's on the Bills practice squad.
Okay. Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, and the Dolphins had him, and they didn't even keep him. They had like Skylar Thompson and Snoop Huntley. So, yeah, like I think during that season, I thought Mike White gave the Jets the best chance to win. But I mean, that's not really saying a ton. Mike LaFleur too. I think when you look at the 2022 Jets offense compared to the 2023 Jets offense, like the 2022 Jets offense, at least there was actually, it's crazy. There was a stretch of 5 games where the Jets led the NFL in total offense under Mike LaFleur. Now, a lot of it was garbage time and, like Josh Johnson throwing for 300 yards in 3 quarters, but it's like, dude, we've never seen anything like that in Hackett's offense, even with Aaron Rodgers for 5 games. And there was creativity. Like he was a psychopath. He would do like Statue of Liberty and like throw like a pass to Berrios and he'd like flip it to whoever, like Cole and get like first down on a 3rd and whatever. So that, I don't know, that offense was a lot more watchable. And of all the guys, if we're talking about the guys that we've casted off, Zach, Salah, even Hackett's next, like I think if we're looking up in 2 years, like who is succeeding, I think it could be Mike LaFleur as an offensive coordinator. Truly.
No,
I mean, is he the only Shanahan guy who sucks? I don't buy it.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, he's gonna get it. I think one day he is going to get a head coaching job. There's, we give anyone who's been within 5 yards of Sean McVay feels like they get a job, right? Zach Taylor went from a quarterback coach to a head coach, so I would not be shocked at all if someone hires him someday to be a head coach. And who knows if he's good, right? Like, that's not really what we're worried about right now. But in this conversation here, I do agree. Like if you're looking at everyone that was kind of forced out here or they moved on from, I think LaFleur has the best chance to actually do something.
Yeah. And I think Mike McDaniel too. I think he was like a no-name assistant in San Fran. Like he was like a passing game coordinator or something.
He was the run game coordinator. Yeah, LaFleur was the pass game coordinator. Mike McDaniel was the run game coordinator, and I think if memory serves correct, I think what's his face, Shanahan tried to protect McDaniel. He's like, you could take LaFleur, but McDaniel's my right hand guy, and he was the OC for a year or two before he got the Dolphins job.
Got it. Hexon again, appreciate it, man. If the OCs don't work out and or Carter, what options do we have to bring in and try and salvage a season at OC or a line coach? In season is going to be tough, Yeah.
Not in season. I don't think you could really do anything in season at this point.
Can you even poach guys from other staffs if you're giving them a promotion in season? I don't know if you can do that. I think every team has the right to block it because in the offseason they can't block it if it's a promotion, but you can't just be willy-nilly taking coaches from other teams in the middle of the season. I think they could say no to that.
Yeah, in season is a completely different beast. After the season, then we could talk about, if you want to take, whoever's the hot quarterback coach that's going to be the next OC and you want to get them brought in here to replace Hackett. Yeah, that's a story that, we could eventually get to. But for now, I don't think this is it. They got to ride it out with whatever they have. And that's another big reason why I'm so pro trading for Devante Adams is because I think it kind of just adds an extra element to this offense and idiot proofs it for Hackett.
Yeah. Yeah. And then, man, if they can't score points, if they get Devante Adams, then it's like, there's no more excuses left, man. No more. I'm surprised that hasn't happened yet. And now I'm like, okay, if it doesn't happen by like if I don't get that tweet by tomorrow morning, it's like, okay, well now it's too late to where he can even play in the Buffalo game, which is a huge reason of why you want to get him. Like every game that passes where like he becomes less valuable because he's playing less games for you. So I don't know if the Raiders are just holding out to get, but then the thing about the Raiders is every week that goes by, they have to pay him another game check. So
Yeah,
it's like
so strange. I don't know if they're holding out for that second round pick. It feels like the Jets and the Saints were the front runner the last like couple days here, but after the Carr injury, it feels like this should be an absolute lock that the Jets eventually trade for him. But I was surprised we didn't get that notification today. You make the big move yesterday with the coach. I thought maybe today would have been the Devante Adams trade. I would trade a second round pick for him, by the way, but I don't think it ends up coming to that.
Yeah, if I had to guess with the Raiders, I think they're willing to pay him one more game check and see if the Jets lose Monday night. Does then JD up it from a third to a second? I think that's kind of what they're waiting on.
Yep. I think that's fair, right? Like a lot of people are saying, oh, it was maybe one game too early with the Salah firing, but I don't know. I'd rather them do it earlier than wait till when they're 2-5 and the season's like actually cooked at that point. But yeah, I don't know. They can't lose this game coming up against Buffalo. This is a must-win game for them.
Yeah, it'd be bad, and it would it'd start to spiral. And I think like I know it's early in the season, but if the Bills go up 2 games on you plus a tiebreaker, I don't know if the Jets have the horses to make that up, truly, to win the division. To be honest, it's a pivotal game. Joe Super Chat says Salah's downfall was when the players were Mike. Dude, doesn't that feel like 10 years ago?
It does. This team has aged me so much. It's really insane. That's not that long ago in actual years, but the amount of shit that has gone down since they wore those t-shirts to Minnesota, that's 3 lifetimes ago.
Yeah, I will say there are some things with that I try not to police this kind of stuff too much, but it is also I'm like I wonder if Ulbrich will be like, "Hey Sauce, put the phone down, bud." You know what I mean? Like, hey Sauce, let's not argue with a Giants fan saying you had 5 tackles after a loss. Like, and I know people take that too far and say, "Oh, he's playing golf, he's playing video games." Like, no, he's a human being. He can have a life. He's a good kid. He's not out there drinking and driving or anything crazy. That's fine. But like certain things like that are just you're like defending yourself after a loss, like showing your stats to like a burner account. Like we could probably do without that.
Yeah, I don't want to go like full old man yells at cloud here because I do agree. Like I think athletes are way too criticized for what they do off the field, and Sauce I think he's mostly fine. He plays video games and like I don't know, he's a little bit nerdy, which is like cool or whatever. But this team feels a little too chronically online for me. It feels like every time after a loss, like everyone's got to go online and like tweet about like I don't know that they're better than this, or we got to fight with fans because someone wrote an article that Breece Hall should be benched, and it's just like I don't know. Can we let this go? Maybe like we don't have to log on every day.
Yeah, and like, dude, and I know, and that was like Jet X Factor, and I will stand on the nothing they said in that article was incorrect, and they showed clips and data to back every piece of it up. Now, they made the title that way to get attention, and it worked. So you're gonna catch some of that smoke when you do that, but it's like. Dude, what? I don't know, man. Like Breece Hall's average, like 2 things can be true. Breece Hall is not right now. He's just not. The offensive line, the blocking is obviously atrocious, but Braylon Allen is a 4th-round rookie who's been much more efficient. And Breece Hall with worse offensive personnel last year was like 4th in the NFL in scrimmage yards. The last game of the season, he was the best player on the field against New England Patriots. He's not moving the same way right now. And there was a play that they showed in that article where on the Van Ginkel pick 6, he could have stopped that from being a touchdown. He had the angle. He's obviously faster than Van Ginkel, and he gave up on the play. And it's like, dude, if that was Lazard, we would be memeing him and saying, go play with your soccer ball, cut this guy. But like Breece and like Garrett and them are like untouchable golden boys. Like, no. If anything, it should be more upsetting when your alleged star players are giving that poor of an effort. Now, like maybe he's playing through an injury. It's the only thing I could think of that explains it. But nah, man, I completely agree. I think that like the young core of this team, it's like I don't know, maybe a little high on their own supply. Like at the end of the day, like we need to sit those guys down and say, hey, because Sauce is not playing as well as last year. Garrett still can't get on the same page as his quarterback. Brees is a shell of himself. And I'll sit them down and say, hey, look, you guys you have a lot of potential. We need you, but you haven't won anything. You haven't gotten your big payday. So maybe a little bit of a slice of humble pie is needed. I know that like sends you to Jet fan prison. And now you're being a hater and you're turning your back on these guys, but like, I don't know, man. I think you're a smart guy. I think you're picking up what I'm putting down.
Yeah, there's clearly a line, right? Like it goes way too far the other way too, where it's like, oh, we've always overrated Garrett and Brees and Sauce and
trade them.
Talk like, that shit is that's way too far.
Right.
Be like, hey, like these guys haven't played up to their standard. Like, I don't know. Both things can be true. Like they've had 30 games of like really awesome tape between all the, even more maybe for some of them, right? Like. We could say, hey, these first 5, 7, whatever, how many games they played, I don't even know at this point. It hasn't been good enough. It's not up to their standard. They need to be better. That's fine. It's when it goes too far the other way where we get a little nuts.
Yeah, we tend to do that. And it's like, I always knew Sauce wasn't good. Like, what? No, what are you talking about? Like, Sauce isn't Revis. Okay. And your mother doesn't love you. Like, what are we just saying? Random facts. I know most Jeff fans like Vrabel, but I really like Stefanski as a candidate. It looks like he may get scapegoated by Haslam. Is that the owner in Cleveland?
Yeah, I believe so. Yes.
Okay. Did a good job in Cleveland. Dude, he has been handed that Deshaun Watson contract. What a crap sandwich that is, man.
He can't bench him. I think this is what Nicholas is saying here. Like he's in a spot where he can't bet. Like the whole team seems to be rallying behind Jameis Winston. Like he's leading the pregame, like the circle, getting the team pumped up, which is, I don't know if I've ever seen a backup quarterback do that. And then this past week or maybe 2 weeks ago, it looked like Watson was walking off the field when Stefanski wanted to go for it on 4th down, and then they ended up putting the punt team in. Like, I feel bad for the guy. Yeah, right. I do feel bad for Stefanski. I would be in on him if he does become available. I do like Vrabel too, though, but you'd have to pair him with a very good offensive coordinator. I know he's not an OC, but at least with him, he feels like he's someone who's had teams that have made some runs in the playoffs, and I feel like I would prefer to go with someone with experience. As exciting as a Ben Johnson or Bobby Slowick might be, I'm a little bit worried about hiring a first-time head coach with a team that has expectations to be a playoff and Super Bowl team.
Yeah, I actually think that Vrabel would kind of be that like CEO that you're trying to get with Salah, where I have seen Vrabel like just have his teams do things situationally. Even though there was that infamous one where he like purposely had his team like commit penalties to like get back into a first down. So like the timing of the game went different and they got the ball back and won. And the other coach like said it was like BS, but it's like Salah would never think of that. Robert Salah could never think of that. So those like and like, I don't know. I know they gave the ball to Braylon Allen, and it didn't work this game. But the previous ones, when you're at the 1 yard line, I think people say, "Oh, well, he doesn't call the offense." Like I don't know. You go over to you, but you're again. It's the definition of a head coach. Like you throughout the whole week, you say, "Okay, when we're in these situations, like this is what we're going to do. Like you're going to run the ball. These are the players you're trying to get to." And I think Vrabel could do some of that stuff now. The last couple of seasons in Tennessee weren't good, and there were like reports that he was just basically kind of an asshole and like rubbed a lot of people the wrong way in Vrabel. And if you kind of see his demeanor, like I don't think that's shocking to anyone. No. He's like an old school hard ass kind of coach that maybe is kind of being phased out with the modern athlete. But if I had to pick between the two, I agree with who had the was it Nicholas? I would agree. I think Stefanski I think he's won Coach of the Year twice, at least once if I'm not mistaken. I think he might have won it twice. Made the playoffs last year with some lackluster quarterback play, and he is an offensive mind. He seems well respected. So I know you don't always want to do retreads, but especially if Rodgers is coming back and maybe you don't want like a 33-year-old brand new head coach. You just want someone who could steady the ship. Again, I'm not to write off Jeff Ulbrich. I think he has a shot to earn the job, but Stefanski is definitely a name to watch for me, for sure.
I would totally be in on that.
Salah's record is his record and deserved to be fired. Not this early, in my opinion, says Dante again. But I feel like he was hamstrung a lot in his career here, either by Woody or JD. What do you think, Matt?
I don't know if that's crazy fair. Like, yeah, some of it I agree with to an extent, but at the same time, the undisciplined penalties have been an issue for me the last 2 years. They were the most penalized team in the NFL last year. This year, they were up there. They had the 15 penalty game against Denver. And for me, like, too many times in big spots, they came out flat. I would love to look up, because I don't know it off the top of my head. If you do, that'd be great. But how, like, their first quarter point differential, it feels like it's way skewed the other way. They always have to feel like they're coming to fight back into these games.
They were outscored 217 points in the first half in his tenure, which is the worst in the NFL.
That I knew it was something crazy like that. It's like, again, like, some of these things may be true, but when you have these insane other stats, like, probably not the guy.
Yeah, I think you're correct, Dante, and it goes back to what I said before, is that when most head coaches, when they get fired, there are other problems with the team that are beyond their control. Like, let's be honest, he didn't have a quarterback for 3 years. You know, not a lot of teams are winning games with Zach Wilson, Tim Boyle, Mike White, and the whole lot of it, for sure. But and sometimes you have to make decisions with imperfect information. And with Salah, there's so many things that a head coach does that is responsible for that were not going well with this team. And part of it that I think is not being discussed is, like, and Joe Caporoso and Connor Rodgers were onto this early. Shocker. Badlands, you know, they're usually on the right side of history. And they made a video, like, after the Vikings game, and said, does Robert Salah want to be here? And I was like, you know, if you really look at him, he seemed like he was just waiting to be put out of his misery. I truly believe that he might have been relieved when he got this news. I could just go back to being a defensive coordinator, because he clearly got rabbit ears from the New York media. He was, like, leaking stats of how other coaches have done while losing their quarterback, and just little sensitive stuff like that. And I just think that he was hoping that Aaron Rodgers would come and save him. And, like, I could just be the defensive coordinator, and Aaron Rodgers, you be the leader, the head coach, the offensive coordinator, and everything else. And it just doesn't work that way. I think he was just exhausted and done with being the head coach of the New York Jets, man. Is that a leap?
No, I don't think so. That's how he looked on the sideline. Do you remember a time where, like, in game, he's going up to people on either side of the ball and, like, talking with them? It feels like anytime he's ever shown, or anytime even just at the game watching him, he's just standing there with that 1,000-mile look. And, you know, maybe when guys come off the field, he, you know, slap him on the shoulder, give him a pat on the ass, and send him on his way. But, like, I don't know. He just never really had that guy in charge feel to him. And you're right. He's going to go back to being a DC, and he's going to get a really good job. He's probably going to be the first DC hired. But it clearly wasn't working here. It was time.
Yeah. And he like the bravado and the excitement and that old San Fran Robert Salah happened when things were going well. But then once things went bad, he just went completely stone-faced. I've never seen him use that energy to rally. Like, he's arguing with refs, or he's cheering. Those are the only two things I've ever seen Robert Salah do on the sideline. I never see him go up to, and Hackett's on the sideline too. So I never see him interacting with Hackett. I've never seen him, like, I remember even I remember, like, Brian Dable, like, chewing out Josh Allen in, like, Josh Allen's second year. And maybe that's not his style, but I remember Rex Ryan taking D Milner, the deep cuts here, and by the shoulder pad, and it was like, it was uplifting, but it was, like, really intense, like a moment of, like, we need you to get your freaking head in the game, dude. And I've never seen Salah do that. And even there was did you catch the play against the Vikings in the fourth quarter where Michael Clemens hit Sam Darnold late, and we got lucky and they didn't call it?
It was lucky.
And Salah was, like, chuckling and tapping on the shoulder. It's like, dude, that is unacceptable. Like, he committed a penalty, but basically got away with it. Like, it's just, and he's, like, laughing about it and tapping him on the thing. And it's like, dude, that's not it, man.
They got bailed out because the phantom DJ Reed call was, like, 4 plays earlier. It was on that same drive. I think that was the makeup call. That's the only reason why they got away with it. Yeah.
And the roughing the punter call was soft too, let's be honest. So it all comes out in the wash in that game. That wasn't why we lost the refs. Mr. Forte says Kingsbury is the guy if we don't make the playoffs. I'm not as bullish on Kingsbury as Stefanski, just because Stefanski's a little bit grayer in the beard, but he is that hot shot. He's the definition of, like, that hot shot offensive mind, right?
I was on the Kingsbury train in 2019. I don't know if I'm back there now at this point. That'd be tough. He's doing great things, obviously, with with Washington right now and their rookie quarterback, but I'm not ready to make that jump. I think Stefanski's proven more as a head coach at this level than Kingsbury has.
Yeah, I think he might be the guy who's an offensive coordinator who's not quite cut out to be a head coach, which is fine. He's got that offense absolutely. I think they're 3-2. And they have like a really great offense. So good for them. Skies he says, "Hey guys, I'm glad Jeff Ulbrich is in charge. I feel like he'll inspire in a different way than Robert Salah. But if we continue to lose, would Woody Johnson clean the whole house with JD?" So Woody came out and he said this is the best roster I've had in 25 years. That sounded like a pretty ringing endorsement of Joe Douglas.
Yeah, it did. He was, apparently Woody Johnson's a Joe Douglas truther. That's what I got out of that conversation on the conference call. It was the one of the most talented rosters he's had in the 25 years he's been here. So I think he's a Joe Douglas guy. Now, does he give him an extension in season? Probably a different story, but yeah, it's going to be really dependent on what happens with Jeff Ulbrich here over the next 12 games for the future of both those guys on this team.
Yeah, I think it also like Aaron Rodgers and how it goes, because I think like there's a really ugly path that we kind of know, like how like he's gone and then everything is just restarting. But I don't with Ulbrich, I agree with you, win a playoff game, but with Joe Douglas, I don't know what it would take, because whenever we talk about the coaches, we say you have to win this many games. But whenever I have conversation with other Jeff fans, I'm not trying to be like negative about JD. I think Joe Douglas is the talent on the team is really good, and he's a big reason for that. But it seems like whenever we talk about Joe Douglas, winning can't be attached to him. So it's like, well, how do I measure his success? So like, we thought the roster was good. We liked the signing, so obviously you have to keep him forever. I don't know. So if there's no like empirical method, it seems.
No, you can't. The win-loss record doesn't stick there. So I don't know what it's going to take. I don't have an answer for you.
Yeah, we'll see. Palikar says Salah's the love child of Todd Bowles and Adam Gase.
That might be.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not quite sure about that. One thing I will say about Woody, though, is it seemed like he was hesitant to have Douglas put a lot of future money on the books, which to me seems like he's kind of seeing how it goes.
Yeah, I think that's a fair way to look at it, right?
With Reddick and then even the Michael Carter extension taking all the way till the summer, and now like we'll see what Devante Adams, like maybe he's saying like, dude, I spent a lot of freaking money. Go do it with what you have, and then we can see what we're doing in next offseason. Maybe.
That's I don't know. They're in a really tough spot. They are in a really tough spot with the future because there's still so much unknown, and they have this long playoff drought. And I think to me, it's going to be up to whether they close that or not for the future of both Douglas and Ulbrich if they're brought back. I don't know, the Salah love child of Bulls and Gase. I'm not quite there on that one.
No, he's in between. I think he's better than Gase, but a worse coach than Bulls. We'll split the difference there. But you guys are the best. Matthew O'Leary, what do you got coming out on the channel these next couple days?
Yeah, hopefully reacting to a Devante Adams trade one of these days, but got to preview this upcoming game against Buffalo. It's a huge one, and just reacting to the continued fallout from the firing of Robert Salah.
Love it. Everybody, hit the thumbs up on the way out, and we will see you next Wednesday. Go Jets.
Go Jets.